Faith Talk 99.5 wants to get the word out about your upcoming.
Call in with your comments or questions now. 855-568-1062. That's 855-568-1062. Your friends at the West 65th Street Church of Christ in Little Rock invite you to open your Bible and study with us as Don McLean answers Bible questions with Bible answers in a search for the truth. This program is presented as part of the efforts of the West 65th Street Church of Christ in Little Rock to search for all the truth presented in God's Word and teach that truth to men and women who, like us, are searching for the truth. Now, here's Don McLean.
And good afternoon. Hope that everyone has had a great day so far. It is a beautiful Monday. And we have come together this afternoon to open God's Word and to receive instruction, encouragement, and hopefully our efforts today will be beneficial for you. We are live here in Little Rock, Arkansas on 99.5 FM. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. We've got a whole bunch of folks already in the Facebook room ready to roll, and thank you all for being with us today. James Hamilton has joined me. James, how are you?
Well, thanks to the Lord, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. You see, you might be within that 6-foot range there, buddy. You might. You're good. Oh, we're good. Hey, I know yesterday was it was odd. It's just odd. Yesterday was the first time that we did not have an assembly here at the building of any kind, except for Carl Van Deventer and myself. We came in and we live streamed a lesson and some thoughts regarding what's going on. And anyway, that is available on our website, w65stchurchofchrist.com. If you are where you can and you would like to check that out, I would encourage you to do so. That is available on our website, like I said, again, w65stchurchofchrist.com. And there it is. All right, I got it. You can go to our website, and there the lesson that was presented yesterday morning, Let Not Your Heart Be Troubled, from John 14. Had some encouraging feedback from that lesson, so you may want to check that out. Again, w65stchurchofchrist.com. And today I want to invite you to think about something that I think most of us understand. I mean, we really do, for the most part. We understand that this COVID-19 virus is serious. I mean, I think that's being demonstrated as time goes on. More and more people are getting it. You know, several years ago we had SARS, we had H1N1. You know, variety of things have happened. But what makes this different? I would say that the speed with which it infects people and the ease with which it infects people makes it a little different.
And there's a couple other things that they talk about a kind of a shell that's around the virus. That might be a strange way of explaining it, but it's very strong. And the other thing is that a person can be carrying it and infecting others without feeling a thing.
Yeah.
That's really one of the most concerning things about it. And I remember hearing about this. It might have been even in December when I first heard about it. But it's something I was thinking, you know, you ought to shut down all flights, not just the ones from Asia.
Yeah, from China.
Because I know a lot of Chinese, they fly from China to Europe to connecting flights, because I have seen that in my experience of flying often from Europe. The airports in Europe are a melting pot for the whole world, from east meeting west, going to America. And so they all should have been shut down all early. But anyway, I know that would have been politically inexpedient.
It was politically incorrect when it happened on January 31st. You know, that was rejected by everybody. Of course, the China government denied all the way up, I think it was January 13th, when the World Health Organization actually recognized that there was a problem. They didn't even, acknowledge that there was a real problem until it was January 13th. So, that's the speed with which it has infected the world, and it's easily transmitted. So just be careful. And the point is, okay, this is serious. All right, we need to take every precaution that we possibly can because our well-being, our physical well-being, is at stake. But there is something much, much, much more devastating, much more serious, much more dangerous, and that is sin.
And so a lot more contagious too.
A lot more. Well, I mean, what's odd, of course, I can't catch it completely unwillingly now. No. The will has to be involved, right? I mean, but the influence certainly is. It's very powerful.
It's pervasive.
It is pervasive and
pernicious.
So that's what I'm going to talk about this afternoon. I want to talk a little bit about sin, and I want to use a text from John the 5th chapter and just kind of go through this text a little bit. And in the context of John chapter 5, Jesus is dealing with some hard-hearted Jews. Jesus is dealing with people who, even though they had seen the miraculous power of Jesus Christ, they still rejected him. It didn't matter what Jesus did, they were still going to reject him. But I want to say to you, that's the result of sin. I mean, a hard heart comes about because of one's love affair with sin. So if I love the world, in 1 John chapter 2 and verses 15 through 17, love not the world, neither the things in the world, the lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. These things are not of the Father, but of the world. But if I love these things, my heart will be hardened. I will die spiritually to the point that I will not be awakened to my plight.
Yeah, that's the warning in Hebrews, and it talked about that even in verse 12
right.
of Hebrews 3, that the heart of unbelief is going to be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin, and so we're to prevent that from happening.
And the cure, of course, for sin is Jesus. And that was one of the main points of my lesson yesterday from John chapter 14. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus did not say, I have come to show you the way, although he did, but he said, I am the way. He did not say, I have come to teach you the truth. He says, I am the truth, although he did teach the truth, but the truth emanates from him, from who he is, because of who he is. He is the truth and the life. Life comes from him. He came to give us life, but the only way that's possible for us is the fact that he is life.
Yeah.
So if you understand my point, Jesus is the cure for sin. The problem is, many people don't want it. People will scramble. They'll go crazy trying to find a cure for some physical ailment like COVID-19. But yeah, there's an argument right now over some of the drugs that have been mentioned that's possible, that will possibly help. And you have news media organizations. I mean, they're completely rejecting some things. I think sometimes people reject things simply because of the one who recommends it, because of their hatred for that person. But nevertheless, the reality is, what if one of those people who are opposing these drugs, if they got sick and they started to get seriously ill with this,
they'd want to try.
You better believe they'd be wanting it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that's another problem with sin. We are spiritually ill. I mean, spiritually dead, and yet we are completely oblivious to our need. And as you go into John the 5th chapter, I just want to read through this a little bit, and then we'll back up and we'll talk about it. In John chapter 5, and beginning in verse 1, after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In these lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after the stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. Now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he already had been in that condition a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, but while I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, Rise, take up your bed, and walk. And immediately the man was made well. He took up his bed and walked, and that day was the Sabbath. The Jews therefore said to him who was cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed." He answered them, "He who made me well said to me, Take up your bed and walk." Then they asked him, "Who is the man who said to you, Take up your bed and walk?" But the one who was healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, a multitude being in that place. Afterward Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you have been made well. Sin no more, lest a worse thing come upon you." The man departed and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. For this reason the Jews persecuted Jesus and sought to kill him, because he had done these things on the Sabbath. But Jesus answered them, "My Father has been working until now, and I have been working." Therefore the Jews sought all the more to kill him, because he not only broke the Sabbath, but also said that God was his Father, making himself equal with God. Now there are a lot of things that just kind of rush through the context here. There are a lot of lessons I think that we can draw from this, and some applications that we can make from this text. Don't know how much time elapsed between chapters 4 and 5. We're just told that Jesus had come to the temple, and there was a feast. Some scholars say that there's some manuscripts that have the definite article, the feast, and so they assume it was the Passover, although Jesus is referenced by John as attending 3 distinct Passovers in the book. We don't know what feast it was. It could have been any number of the 3 major feasts that the Jews would assemble in Jerusalem for. But Jesus is at the temple, and north of the temple area was a pool called Bethesda. Now the word Bethesda comes from a word meaning mercy, and they had assembled around this pool, these sick people, for what purpose?
Well, to be healed.
They were hoping to be.
But it was
healed.
only one person that would be there, the first one after the water was stirred.
Right.
That's the one that would be healed.
That's the one that
They're all waiting to get that chance.
Yeah. So excavations, by the way, have uncovered some of these things, and so the accuracy of this text can be validated by archaeology. And as far as the pool itself and everything, we know that it was there. Now, verses 3, the latter part of verse 3 and verse 4 are not in any extant Greek manuscript. In fact, can't find anything prior to 400 A.D. and appears to be a late insertion. To explain, verse 7, which there, the man speaks of the waters being stirred, and so this insertion is to explain what was taking place, and it's kind of like the way I'd explain it is we may have notes and stuff that we write in our Bible, to let us know what's going on, and eventually that note got inserted into the text. At least that's the common assumption. But nevertheless, this was something that the people of that time did believe. It was a practice. That has been verified. They believed that whoever got into this water first would be healed, and an angel is the one that is responsible for stirring the waters and making them efficacious in that way. But nevertheless, Jesus offers to heal this man. he was a man who was infirm. He had an infirmity of 38 years. It was a state of incapacity, according to Louw-Nida. We don't know exactly what that was. Apparently, it had something to do with his mobility because he couldn't get to the water before anybody else.
Well, he needed help in order to get there
Yeah.
before anybody else, and he said there's nobody there to take him there. And he didn't really directly answer Jesus' question, which was, do you want to be made well? The guy probably would assume that everybody who was there near the pool was there because they did want to be made well. But Jesus asked him, do you want to be made well? And he starts explaining why he couldn't, even if he wanted to.
Right.
That's kind of how he answers him.
And I think there's a lesson there. Listen, when it comes to sin, for example, what can we do of ourselves, from ourselves, by ourselves to take care of that problem?
Well, even if we want to be made well from sin without God's help, we're not going to be able to.
That's right.
And even with another person's help, we're not going to be able to, actually.
That's true.
It's
And
just Jesus who can do it.
if Jesus had not died on the cross, we would still all be condemned in sin because of our sin. We would all
Hopeless.
be, that's right.
Helpless.
And so we cannot solve that problem. And that's the purpose of grace, my friend. And so many people misunderstand the concept of grace, but God has made provision. God has made a way. That is the grace of God that has been provided to sinful man. Now, we must respond. And that's something that this man was instructed to do. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had been in that condition for a long time, for 38 years, he asked him, do you want to be made well? And to your question, James, that kind of strikes me as odd. Like you said, certainly everybody that was there for what reason?
Well, be made well.
But they were looking, and maybe this would be the lesson here, they were all looking for a cure from the wrong source, and looking to accomplish it themselves through their own strength. But nevertheless, the reality is Jesus had the power to heal him. And so the one who had the power is now asking the man, do you want to be made well?
Right.
And some were satisfied and comfortable in some are satisfied in their infirmities. They pretend, I guess, to want a cure, but the reality is there are a lot of folks out there who are simply enjoying their life of sin. They don't want to be made well. And sadly, people who love the wages of sin, who love unrighteousness, as 2 Thessalonians 2:12 says, they're not going to listen to anyone who has the cure. They're just not going to listen. And there's nothing I can do about that, nothing you can do about that. If people do not want the truth, they're not going to hear the truth. But the man, he was in a hopeless condition. And there's something else interesting in this story. You had those who were actually preventing this man from being healed. They stood in his way.
Well, yeah, they always stepped in front of him as far as to be healed, and that's what he keeps saying. Every time I want that to happen, somebody else gets there before I can be put in there.
You know what, my friend? There are people today who stand in the way of people being healed of their sin, too.
Yeah.
It's not just atheists either. It's not just college professors who deny the very existence of God. We have false teachers who profess to be following Jesus Christ, who tell people the wrong information, who fill their heads full of error, full of false doctrine, which comes and originates from men, which cannot heal, which cannot save, kind of like the children of Israel when they were given over to idolatry. They would place their confidence in these idols, which they couldn't walk, they couldn't talk, they couldn't hear, they certainly couldn't save.
No.
But what's the difference between a false doctrine of a doctrine and commandment of man and idolatry in the Old Testament? I mean, in practicality.
Well, Samuel said there's really no difference at all between disobedience and idolatry. and rebellion and witchcraft or sorcery, which is what idolatry and paganism was based on. Just to disobey God and not do things the way He said to do them is just as wrong in His sight.
And right now there's this search for a vaccine for COVID-19. We're always looking for vaccines to inoculate us from these dreaded diseases. There is a vaccine, by the way, for sin. We'll talk about that later. And of course, it's Jesus. It's taking what Jesus says and applying it to our lives and being wholly devoted to Him and our service to Him. That will inoculate us or help inoculate us from sin. Doesn't make anyone invulnerable. It does not prevent anybody from the danger or the threat. However, we are so concerned about this virus, we'll go everywhere trying to find that way to keep us from getting it, but yet people will not seek the truth, which will help us prevent us from getting the serious, deadly disease of sin through false doctrine. Now, something else, though. False doctrine. I believe that error will indeed inoculate someone to the point where they cannot receive the truth. They're blinded to the truth by the error that they have received. We have had many people respond to this radio program arguing against the necessity of being immersed in water in the name of Jesus Christ for the remission of sins. Even though Jesus commanded it, even though it's part of the Great Commission, as we find in Matthew chapter 28, verses 19 and 20, Mark chapter 16, verses 15 and 16, we see it carried out in Acts chapter 2. We see it throughout the book of Acts in relationship to the preaching of the gospel and people's responding to that gospel message. We find it over and over and over again, yet people are continually fighting against what the Bible teaches.
Well, even most of the epistles mention it as well.
Sure.
And its importance.
But we have to twist the scriptures to get around what the scriptures say in order to uphold what we have accepted, which is false. And I'm afraid that many people have been inoculated to the truth with their error. So that's another danger.
Well, I mean, a pharmacist has to study a lot of medicines and every potential combination of medicines, because there can be some harmful side effects of combining one medicine with another, especially for the intended treatment of a particular medicine for a particular disease. That certainly would apply to mixing truth with error.
Yeah.
And just a mixture of that can have devastating consequences. It will have devastating consequences.
Well, when you mix the doctrines of men with the truth, you corrupt the truth, and it's no longer the whole truth. So, something else that's interesting, Jesus says to him, "Rise and take up your bed and walk." Okay, now, this is not an example of salvation by faith alone without obedience. That's not the point that Jesus. In fact, the man was told to do what? He was told to do something. He had to act on his faith.
Yeah, he had to do what Jesus said, but the order of events, he made him whole. He made him whole first, before he rose and took up his bed.
That's true.
And then he walked, which of course the Pharisees objected to.
Well,
I know you have a point to make concerning that. There was something else about men, that other people that would prevent somebody from obeying the truth. A lot of times it's the people that we love more than we love God that would prevent us from obeying the truth.
True.
So,
we
I think
see
that's something
it.
else to think about.
It's amazing
from
how
motivation.
much, someone who is highly recognized and they have all of these accolades from the denominational world of how wonderful they are. They'll tell you what the Bible doesn't say, and people just flock to that and they eat it up like it's candy and the most important thing ever said. And then they wind up rejecting the truth because of it, because of their popularity and their prestige and their power. So,
well, even family members can prevent someone from accepting the truth, because it could be the parents who believe this other way for so long, and other family members and grandparents and so on, and people emotionally will make those decisions to stay with family instead of accepting the truth. And Jesus said that we have to put the truth first, put him first.
The point then in that Jesus did indeed heal him is the fact that Jesus provided this man something that he could not provide for himself. And the man's response was obedience. He got up, he picked up his bed, and he did indeed walk.
Right.
Just as Jesus told him to. Mm-hmm. And he could not have been healed on his own. We have to look to Jesus. Jesus is the cure for sin, but we have to look to him with trust. We're out of time already.
The Church of Christ that meets at 7115 West 65th Street in Little Rock has presented this program in the interest of searching for the truth. To request a past program, religious discussion, sermon CD, or religious literature, call 501-568-1062. That's 501-1062. You can email Don McLean by going to the church's website, w65stchurchofchrist.com. If you prefer to write to the West 65th Street Church of Christ, the address is P.O. Box 190062, Little Rock, Arkansas 72219. Please join us for Bible study this Sunday morning at 9 a.m. and worship at 10 a.m. Sunday evening worship begins at 5 p.m. We also have a Wednesday evening Bible study at 7 p.m. You're welcome at any and all of these services. Tell your friends to tune in each weekday at 3 p.m. for Searching for the Truth on Faith Talk 99.5. We hope our efforts will help you as you search for the truth.
You're listening to Faith Talk 99.5, your home for encouragement, inspiration, truth.